All right, so let's open the March 7th meeting of the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Commission. Attendance has been taken. Let's go through approval of the minutes. You should have copies of the minutes from the last meeting. I would entertain a motion to accept them as submitted.
So moved.
We have a motion from David, a second.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any discussions, corrections, additions? All right, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. That is done. Moving on to the next item of agenda. First item, discussing the playground at Baskerville Park. Matt, I'll throw this to you.
So we had some items that failed their inspection and have caution taped and signed those. For those not familiar, this is a really unique park site. It is very, very small. It is heavily wooded. There's a lot of quality trees on the site. It's not a situation where I think we want to come in and clear trees to create a larger playground space. I think in a lot of ways we're confined to the space that's there. I've pulled together a couple of options and I'm hopeful. Are you able to see something that says Baskerville Playground on the top of your screen now?
I'm just seeing the minutes or the
Okay,
agenda.
let me reshare the right screen. So there's some questions that we need to answer regarding this site. And I think the first is, are we expanding the existing playground boundary? To do so would likely require removal of trees. Do we keep or replace the swings? The swings that are there are in working order, but show signs of age. And then we need to establish a budget for the project, including not only a budget, but where funds would come from. There are some capacity within operating funds, although not ideal. There is our ADA capital allocation, or we could delay the stone field replacement to 2023 and slot Baskerville in. I'm not of the mindset that this is a site that we want to spend the same amount of money we're spending at the rest of our neighborhood parks, but I'm going to lay out just kind of a couple of options here for perspective so that you can see what we're talking about. So a small standalone structure like this would be 13,945 with the roof, or because there's plenty of shade on this site, 12,945 without the roof. That's an installed price.
Expensive roof.
If we're looking at replacing a swing set, a 2-bay swing set is a little over $3,000, and a 4-bay swing set is just under $6,000. And then kind of another option, if we wanted to go instead of a modular structure, just some components. So you could do a standalone slide, a seat rocker, that kind of larger plastic molded slide, and then a rock tunnel. The 4 of those would be like around approximately $20,000. And we could, I mean, there's some ability to switch and look at different options here, but these were just 2 quick kind of off the cuff options that if we wanted to look at doing something at this site, I thought they were reasonable and would fit on the site.
Can you go back to the site to what's there currently now? I didn't see it all. It was cut off the page. It'd be nice to know exactly which components are out of compliance and whatever.
All right, bear with me a moment and I will bring that up.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot there in terms of like, there's a seesaw, there's a slide, a fairly large, a taller slide with and there's a couple other like little rockers, I think, plus the sandbox and swings. I think that's all that's there at present. I don't think you have to go overly elaborate at this location. I've taken my kids here since they were born, and that little park has been very sufficient for us to do a quick little, 20-minute outing to go over there. And most of the time, honestly, the kids love the swings. So, and at least that's been my experience with my two kids, and I know that our neighborhood, this park is right in my neighborhood. A lot of the other families that have utilized the parks, the swings tend to be the number one thing that they love to use the most. So I don't think it has to be overly complex or anything like that. This isn't a place where you spend, a couple hours, like I said,
Yeah.
maybe spending 20 minutes, half hour, before or after a meal to burn off energy.
So John, just to
Yeah.
add to what Nick has said and answer your question, you can kind of see this slide that's in the background, and then there are two what we call spring riders here towards the front, and then there's a teeter-totter kind of off in the foreground a little bit. And then as you come down Century Avenue, you see the swing area that's here.
And which of you said there's parts of this that are not in compliance. Can you be more specific about what are the problematic components?
It's all four of these front components. The only thing that is salvageable is the swing set.
Swing set, okay.
Is the swing set going to stay in reasonably good condition for a while?
I think we have to be careful about defining a while.
Well, yeah.
The challenge that we've created is we've created a 25-year playground replacement plan. And I can't tell you that if we come in and replace these components, that swing set is still going to be viable in 25 years. Now, could it make it 10 years? I think that's probably safe to say yes. But again, I want to be careful in saying we have a 25-year playground replacement plan, but I can't tell you that swing set, if we leave it in place today, is going to make it to another 25 years.
I certainly understand, and I understand your concern about having the playground replacement plan intact and not have it be all piecemeal. At the same time, I think there's some value to trying to hang on to stuff if we can get another 10 years out of it.
I agree completely.
Yeah, Matt, where does this park sit on a 25-year plan?
It's slated for, off the top of my head, I wanted to say it was like 2028 or 2029.
Okay. So according to that, even if we did a partial fix here, it would still come up in about 6 or 7 years, and that'd be a point to look at the swing set and see what's going on.
Right. The challenge with putting that park on the playground replacement is all of them had a modular structure, with the exception of this one, that we had a date of when it was installed. We were totally 100% guessing as to the age of this playground, because we were unable to find the records, because we had great records on all the modular structures that were installed, but not the single use components.
Okay. Perhaps you could go back now, and now for me at least, I got a better sense of this park, and go back to your options that you laid out, your sort of 3 general options.
Do you see those options now on the screen?
No.
We'll see the park.
Yeah, I apologize. I have to stop, share, and reshare every time I go to a different screen. And get it back up to the top here.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
So this was one example of a very small modular structure.
Yeah.
These are typically, when we're doing the playground replacements, these are the single largest component of what we're doing. This is something obviously much smaller than what we typically install, but again, this is likely appropriate for the site based on its size.
Matt, could I ask, I don't remember, what was the price difference between having the roof and not having the roof?
It's $1,000 difference.
Okay.
And the roof is not something a kid can get up on. I mean, it's not part of it's literally just a shade mechanism. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no play value to it. I'd go back and say that knowing my children, they'd find a way to end up on top of it, but it doesn't mean that there's play value associated with it.
Yeah.
I personally think you could leave off the roof and
Yeah.
The
I-
kids
I
will be
agree.
fine.
So every once in a while, you get the occasional acorn or something will fall down, but like
They
you can
would
do that
love
on the when they're on the swings too.
I would be more concerned about what the birds leave behind, but
And when you're
Yeah.
waiting in line to get on the, the long line waiting for the slide and
This is one of the rare parks, though, as Matt said. I think it's basically shaded even in the middle of the afternoon in the summer.
yeah, well, I pulled it up on a map, a Google map, and you can't see the park at all.
yeah.
Yeah.
There are trees. Yeah. All right, so that was your first option, A option. What was the B option?
Let me get there. Was more of these individual components. Now, you could do a structure and a component. The components all vary in their actual cost. I think the idea would be is to establish a budget so that I could go back and get a couple of proposals with some different ideas to bring back.
So when you say
Likely-
20,000, are you talking in general for a structure, or is that including all of those things you're showing there?
That would be all four of those individual components. So these
and
tend to
can-
range, depending on their complexity, they range from anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 each.
Mhm.
So you could do four of these roughly for a $20,000 budget, or you could do the structure above and one of them for likely less than $20,000. Or you could just do the modular structure above. And I think I'd personally like to see the modular structure above and another component, or doing 3 or 4 of these components.
Okay, and what was your third option? You had a C or just an A and B?
Oh, it was just the price of replacing the swings. And I think from what I've heard, there's interest in trying to keep the swings and
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So the issue really comes down to budget, which you have a better handle on. You started by saying there might be some availability, but let's talk about the money part of this thing. I mean, we're talking probably between $15,000 to $20,000, right?
Correct. And so the easiest place to find that would be unfortunately delaying the playground replacement plan for a year. We're not in a critical situation. Stonefield is the playground that's scheduled to be replaced this year. We're not in a critical situation. We could push that off and actually have some, if we set a budget of 20,000 for this playground, it would leave an additional 20,000 in that budget to carry over to next year, and we'd only need to request 20,000 for the replacement at Stonefield. It would slide everything ahead a year. I don't see a significant harm in doing that once. It's a situation where, and I don't, one of the conversations I've had with the park staff is, and trust me, this caught me by a little bit surprised that we had failure of equipment here, because those guys are really good at letting me know typically when we're approaching a problem. And I think for whatever reason, this just got caught. We've done some really good things on the playground side where we were stocking frequent replacement parts. We've got things sorted by the vendors and the manufacturers. And I think we're in a really good place. This is just a situation that kind of caught us off guard, and it shouldn't have, but it did.
Well, you need to get your crews to spend more time playing on these things as a way to test them out, lunch breaks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the ways to look at it is you postpone, but then when this park was going to come up in about 5 or 6 years, you would gain back at that point.
Correct.
And what gets shoved ahead gets back in sync, it would seem. So
Yep.
comments.
But what gets postponed also has to be done eventually.
Right. I think Matt's just saying it will push things off for a year, push the cycle off for a year. And then I guess my point is in 5 years, we'll pull it back into alignment because we won't be doing this park in 5 years.
Yeah, okay.
The other option would be is in next year's budget to request to do both Stonefield and the playground scheduled for next year in next year's request. And again, we're at the whims of finance and the council to approve that, but it'd be another way of trying to get back ahead, and we'd be requesting less because we're likely to have $20,000 to carry over in that line.
Yeah.
If we go this route.
Well, I think that's what we should do. I think that we should postpone the Stonefield and put the money into this park. I don't think we have a big choice to delay new equipment on this park if the old equipment is not good, is not satisfactory.
I agree.
Yeah, I guess I concur as well. And I think that, that we postpone Stonefield with the idea that we be diligent as much as we can to try to ultimately catch up as soon as we can to get back on sync. But, Stonefield's not in a crisis here. You've got toys that you can't get on. And the yellow tape is not only bad for the park, but bad for the image of the city, I think, too. So
Absolutely.
Let's do that. I think you should say you need to pull not to exceed $20,000 and see what you can do. Those things that you're there, the four of those that you show, the two on the bottom are the ones I like the best.
Yes.
I think as a kid, the one with the little climbing wall, you can actually go underneath it. And that's an enticing thing. And the other thing doesn't define what it is you're supposed to do with it, which means it has lots of opportunities to do something with it.
I will say though, as a parent who utilizes park as well, having the teeter-totter, that's something that a lot of parents will interact with their kids if they've got multiple kids.
Sure.
It's nice for them to also interact that way. Yes, that's just something to consider. I know my kids like the teeter-totters quite a bit when they were playing there, but they were also would play on a log if it was in the park. So
I guess that's
tell
what
you, from
we don't have to overthink what they're going to do with this stuff.
right.
Yeah.
If I can interject
Yeah.
can you hear me okay? I'm not sure if I'm
Yes.
not
Yes.
coming through. Does anybody disagree with the thinking that for 13,000 or 14,000 for that first option, to me, it makes little sense to have something such as that compared to a mixed bag of items, sort of a cafeteria plan with the items below that give you some creativity, give you an opportunity, like with the teeter-totter, one adult versus your 3 kids or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. You could get all 4 for 20 grand, maybe not those 4, but something like that. And that gives a lot of diversity of stuff compared to 13,000 for not that much in my book.
Yeah, I mean, even in this group, you've got a slide, you've got almost everything that's on that other unit. And then some.
And more.
There's more activity, I think. And I really like that white one. I mean, that
Yeah.
it has both activity and creativity.
So I think I'm hearing a bit of a consensus that we think we should move ahead with this. And there's, I think, a tendency to look at the individual items rather than the group cluster thing is better bang for the buck, so to speak. But so,
Yes.
Matt, do you need a motion on this?
I
Just
don't,
direction. Go
I
ahead.
think it might, I think we're suffice to just say there's direction to come back
Yeah.
with looking at the 4 components with a budget of $20,000.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Up
And then
to
you'll
4
come back with a
components.
specific proposal that we'll vote on.
Correct.
All right.
And I might give you an A and a B.
Okay.
And I would also say if they have a slide that doesn't have that little tiny roof on the top, if it were anything less money, I would go, we don't need that.
No, we don't.
And that green thing down on the bottom left has sort of a slide, looks like there's slide.
Looks like,
So
on that.
that, Jim, to answer your question, that is the modern day merry-go-round.
Oh, it
oh,
is.
does it
Goes
spin?
around.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
Makes it
that's
even
pretty
better.
cool.
All right.
I would play on
Like
that.
that.
All right. Anybody object, or are we okay kind of with that, the direction we're giving Matt?
Yes.
Thank you. I think let's move on to item number 2, a presentation on park fees and possible directions based on Matt's gallivanting around conferences and stuff like that.
Yeah, gallivanting. It was a unique experience to be back at a conference. Let me get the right screen share here. I'm sparing you all 30 PowerPoint slides, and I'm just going to hit kind of some of the key points here. We've had a lot of discussion on park fees, and we have a recently completed 5-year master plan that talked a lot about park fees and the needs to increase them. And one of the things that I learned during this presentation at the conference was that the city, to justify an increase in fees, really is due to complete a needs assessment. And I've been talking with the city's finance director about possible firms to do that work, to solicit proposals. But I also wanted to have this discussion with you before we go that step. So the needs assessment requirements, there's a number of things. One of the most unique or interesting to me is the impact of fees on affordable housing. The communities really had a lot of discussion about affordable housing. We talked about it during the park fee discussion, but that the law actually requires that the community do include this in the needs assessment is important.
Could I stop you for just a second?
Yep. Yep.
Might help, certainly help me, but to clarify just exactly what you mean by park fees.
So the park fees are the fees that developers pay. There's 2
Okay.
separate funds. One is a fee in lieu of land dedication when they don't dedicate land or dedicate less than our ordinances would require. And the other is park improvement fees. And those are two
See, I didn't
fees
know if you
paid
meant
by all
rental.
residential developers. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah, no, I wasn't clear if you meant like, rental fees and things like that.
No. So the needs assessment would look at a rational relationship between the fees and the cost need for new facilities. The fees can't be shifted to development versus existing, so it means that development needs to pay for new facilities. We've had plenty of discussions about that. And that the fees are reduced to compensate for other fees on development or public facilities. Not sure that one's necessarily applicable, but it's based on capital costs or reasonable estimates. The fees would be reduced for grants or other outside funding, and may not include amounts necessary to address existing deficiencies in public facilities. Some of this is pretty basic and things we've covered, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We've talked about multifamily, single family, and then the multifamily dwellings as well. You may not know, but the fees are paid at the time a building permit is taken out by a development. Oops, I skipped a slide. The fees computed based on a cost standard per acre or per foot for trails. Once we go through the needs assessment, there is a public hearing that's held on the fee or fee changes. And then it goes into accounting requirements and things that I and the finance department need to be worried about. And we're doing this now, so there's really no concern there. But again, in 3 days of sessions, my number one takeaway from a conference was to come back and talk to you about this and solicit proposals to have this needs assessment completed. It'd be the validation for any fee increase. We ran into a lot of questions and discussions about a proposed fee increase, and it's kind of sat on the shelf since. And I think this would be the support and justification that if we are going to consider a fee increase that we need to do. And if we're not going to consider a fee increase, it's been long enough since that ordinance was originally developed and went through this process, that I think now is a good time, especially with the changes going on within city leadership, that this would be a great time to move forward on this. The consultant indicated that if your process is straightforward and doesn't get, what's the word to use, sabotaged and held up, that these can typically be done in the $10,000 range. She had one that got very complex, and they had to go back and reconsider numerous times, and it pushed the $20,000 mark. So that's kind of the ballpark that we're talking about for this work to be completed.
Well, we could hope it's not like the airport commission.
John,
I sat on that strategic plan committee,
oh my gosh.
6-hour meetings. Anyways, that's neither here nor there, but
Yep.
well, Matt, we talked about this a lot over the last year with the strategic plan. We presented what we thought had to be reasonable fees towards the council. I never heard much what happened or anything, or what the reaction was to that concept, except a bunch of jaws hitting the floor. And then, but you feel this will give some tooth, or put some teeth behind what we're saying, and so it's not just us saying it, but somebody else's.
So here's what's important to me, John. This right here, that somebody is aware that the state laws change from time to time, and that they're monitoring it. And this law has changed a great deal in the last 5 years. There's been a lot of tweaks to it. And again, I think, this presentation was done by Baker Tilly. Our finance department does work with Baker Tilly. Our finance director has suggested strongly that we do this and solicit a proposal from Baker Tilly and anyone else that we can have solicit a proposal, because there are so many nuances to this. The affordable housing thing was something we talked about, but it was never contemplated or looked at in terms of how the law intends for this to look at. And I think there was a lot of good effort in what we tried to do, but I don't know that it was based on the state law and a really strong understanding of what that law says.
No, in fact, I think when we talked about that, we weren't aware of this change of 3-4 years ago that determines how we can or can't use these fees. So yeah, I think this is a very important time to do this. The other question is, though, this is who and where and how do we get money to pay to do this study?
Well, I agree that that's an important consideration, and it's something that I'll talk in my meetings with and try and come up with a plan. But what I wanted to see right now is it worth soliciting this proposal and trying to know what we're talking about in terms of cost.
Comments, thoughts?
Yes, I think that
Yes.
we should go out and do that.
I think we should too.
Nick shaking his head. I take that as a yes.
It is a yes. Sorry, my kids are, I'm supervising my kids right now. Make sure
Everybody
they're-
agrees, shake your head,
You
No,
want
I
a
agree.
motion on this, Matt?
No, just direction to bring something back at a future meeting, and that's where you take action.
Yeah, I think the last 6 months for me has been a real tail spinner with this changes in our understanding of the fees and what we can do and can't do and how. And it's very clear that we've hit pressure points on staffing, on all kinds of funding for this, and it needs to be looked at with some kind of a force and a little more oomph behind it. So yes, I think you've gotten
Right.
8 or 9 nods of yes, so go for it.
And I think it's very important that we have something very clear written down.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's a good idea.
Well, I think it ensures us that I think we've all acted in good faith in terms of the park fees, but I think we all want to make sure that we're also not just acting in good faith, but that we're in compliance with state laws.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, no other comments. We'll move on.
I apologize, John. I'm trying to find my agenda back here.
Yeah, it's item 3 was the proposal for the Park Peak System Group audio system for the outdoor pool.
One moment, let me get it back
A
shared.
word of proposal to Peak Systems Group. You just need a second computer right by your side and then you don't lose them.
Yeah, yeah. Multiple screens. It's
I
always
keep
helpful.
looking to the side. Yeah.
So you may remember that we had brought a proposal for replacement of the audio system at the outdoor pool. A number of the speakers don't currently work. There's also a number of speakers that are, well, for instance, we don't have speaker coverage in all areas of the pool. So as important safety announcements are made, there isn't adequate audio coverage at the pool for those announcements. So the proposal that was included from Peak is not linking, so hopefully it is here in the agenda packet.
It's in the packet. And you've got their estimate $14,510.
Correct. And so they've reviewed the site, and the total on the proposal is $14,510. We had 2 other firms. The other firm that submitted a proposal was Marco, and they were in the $20,000 range. And then there was a third company that said that they weren't able to supply a proposal at this time. So we're recommending moving forward with the proposal from Peak. They do a lot of this kind of audio work in entertainment venues, a lot of high school gymnasiums and outdoor stadiums, and the pool is definitely that similar work they've done in other communities and other locations.
Yeah, they think they did the Middleton pool, high school pool.
Correct.
I'll make a motion to approve the this project and
All right.
spend that.
Motion from David for approval. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Joan seconds. Okay, discussion.
And just to share, the funding source here is capital funds for the pool. This was a planned project in 2022.
Okay. Any other discussion, comments on the motion? Okay, again, the motion is made and seconded to award the contract to Peak Systems Group. All those in favor of the proposal, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. That motion carries. We're now down to item number 4, location new basketball court at Parisi Park. And Matt, you said you showed us the place where it's going to be, and I saw 2 of them on that map. So
Well, I wanted to show 2 locations and talk a little bit about both of those locations.
you're only putting in 1, right? Is it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Only 1, but there are some positives and negatives, and I kind of wanted to share those with both locations. Can everyone see the screen with the 2 orange
Yes.
blobs? Okay. I'm going to start with the one north of the path. That site, we have the most work to do there if we were to select that site. It is, the grade goes uphill there. There likely would be some retaining wall work that we would need to do. Earth moving, it's completely feasible. It also gives us the largest area for a court where we could put in a regulation size. Most of our courts are not regulation size. So a regulation size high school court is 50 feet wide by 84 feet long, and that's roughly what's depicted in that rectangle there. The site below the trail, it wouldn't be that close to the ball diamond. I had trouble getting things aligned, but we would slide that a little bit to the right to allow for more room between the ball diamond and the basketball court. And although it looks like it is negatively impacting trees, we are fairly confident that it is away from the root zones and that there would be no trees harmed or impacted by the basketball court. Along those lines, the dimensions here would be the same, about 50 feet wide, and 60 feet long. And that is very similar to the court that we just completed at Meadows, that we redid at Meadows. That's roughly the same length and size of court. Again, I'm not sure that a high school regulation court is the most important thing in a park setting. It's more about providing the recreational amenity. So there are the other benefit of the site south of the path is it is really flat, very flat, almost little to no grading. We will be excavating both sites to allow for a 6-inch gravel base and then asphalt laid over the top of that. So happy to answer any questions, clarify anything further on these two locations, but looking for some feedback and input.
Well, my initial input when I looked at this is said the lower one to the south is way too close to the ball diamond because, you know, there's a lot of little league games and things going on there. And that seems to be where it looks on the map now would kind of really block where people are going to sit and hang out for a baseball game. But you say it will be not that close, but it will still be somewhat close. I mean, it's still a line.
Correct. You can see about how far we can slide it before we hit the path.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just had trouble lining up in my non-AutoCAD software here that I'm working with. It's basically paint on aerial photos. So limited in my technology here.
No, I agree. The one to the north seems to fit really nicely with the ballpark because behind home plate is one place where really you're not going to have any activity that's going to interfere between the two different sports going on. Other comments?
I kind of had the same idea. I actually went over there this afternoon and looked at those sites.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided when I was there that I liked the one north of the path much better because there was more room and it wasn't as close to the ball diamond. But I hear what Matt's saying, and you know, I didn't think about I just thought about the placement, the location of each one, and how it would work with other activities. But
are there any numbers, preliminary numbers, anything to compare the two to each other?
Numbers meaning cost?
Yeah.
We haven't gotten that far. The north location will cost more. I can't tell you how much more. We haven't gotten as far to know what type of retaining wall or how much retaining wall that we're going to have to put in there. There would be some incremental additional costs just because it's going to be more asphalt, more gravel.
Mm-hmm.
So
Go ahead.
if there, can I ask, if there were actually a ball game going on, then this could create a problem. Is that correct? Or
there's a fence down that third baseline. It's not going to get.
okay.
And in a majority, not all, but a majority of the play on this diamond is younger kid, like lower age of kids play at this field. The high school does use it early in the spring when conditions are too wet to use their normal locations, because this tends to be a drier site than some of the other sites in the park system. But Mark would know best, but that's maybe 2 or 3 games early in the spring at best.
Yeah.
Oh no, depends on the spring.
Well, true.
And there is a fence. There is a fence along there. Could the fence be higher? Could it be replaced for a little higher fence along there?
It's already pretty high.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that the cost addition of adding the fence is going to have a return on benefit.
Okay.
Yeah, then you might as well do the north, probably.
I just see that if you had a group of people watching the basketball game, or people throw the ball and it goes flying off to the sideline and rolls right underneath where the benches where they're doing a baseball game. Those were my concerns, is that it's not a really confined space, quite like a tennis court, which is fenced in on all the sides. Matt, you're willing to do a smaller size court with that southern of those two options, what if you looked at that smaller size court in the north position? Would that cut down some on the amount of excavation that would have to happen?
It very well may, and we could do a smaller court north of the path as well.
Yeah,
Well, I'm actually okay with the southern, with the southern one. If it's gonna save us some money, we do have a budget to follow.
The engineer in me would prefer to avoid retaining wall for a variety of reasons. And I mean, I guess I don't have huge feelings against doing the southerly position there. Yeah, it'd be kind of nice to keep it away from the baseball, but if it works out better as far as retaining wall, but if we can make a little bit smaller one on the north side and avoid most, or if not all, the retaining wall, that would be okay too. But I agree with Sue that we want to try to keep things in the budget in mind.
The challenge on the side on the north is as you go up the hill, the width, and we don't want to sacrifice the width of the court. The length is the item we have some ability to adjust. So your excavation gets more the further you go up the hill, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What's the issue with the south one? Could you redirect the path a little bit so you get another 5 or 10 feet over there by just slightly changing the bend in that path?
It's something we could definitely take a look at. I hadn't contemplated that, and can talk to staff about that, because we'd have the equipment on site to make that work.
Yeah, I mean, I think for my concern, and maybe some others, is just trying to get it as far away from the baseball diamond as possible. And if that means jutting a little bit into that corner, shoving it to the east, and it runs into a little corner of that path, I wouldn't think it'd be a huge amount of redirect to just put a little bend in the path or something.
If these were rotated a little bit, would that help the situation in either location?
Not on the north side. On the south, we were trying to use the existing path as a limit, and I now see that if we were able to adjust that path alignment a bit, we could maybe slide it further.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, take a look at some options.
Yeah, I think that I'm picking up from the committee that either of those places are nice and they both have problems, but I think the biggest concern that I think others do, is that we just want to be able to maximize the distance from the baseball court. Other than that, I don't see a big difference as to whether it should be north or south. Concurrence, non-concurrence.
I agree.
I agree with that.
So I will continue to work with staff on maybe getting a sharper pencil on what we're looking at in cost numbers. We're going to be soliciting proposals for the pavement portion and kind of bring this back as a package in the near future.
Yeah, I hear loud and clear about the lack of a desire for retaining walls, and that's why I was mentioning the path. And so I think that, looking at the southernmost of those two, if you can move it further to the east, I suspect most of us would be pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
So Matt, did you even look, if you take my recollection is that there is a nice flat spot down the third baseline and to the east. Are you trying to align it next to a path?
Well, we want the path connectivity due to ADA compliance, but we just have to be able to connect to the path. So as long as, and again, that's able to be done a number of ways.
And then the other thing, if you don't do it there, regulation softball field, I think, is 250 feet down the lines. Do you have that down the right field line? Could you put it back in there?
We talked about that. When I look, I viewed trying to do something at the end of the softball field as problematic.
Okay.
That was a complicated process, Matt.
Good
Oh, there we are.
There it is.
job.
Yeah. Matt, I think you should stick to doing parks, you know.
Yeah, clearly. See if I can figure this out.
Well, Matt's doing his thing. John, I concur with what you're saying. I like it. It seems that the path can be pushed further north and east, giving a lot more room for moving the for moving the basketball courts further away. I think that from, at least if I'm not missing something, that looks like the natural way to try and do it.
Yeah, and that's what, yeah, thank you. I think the path seems malleable, and as Matt said, if you have equipment there to do the grading anyways.
Well, the path, there's a curve in the path. Why not just straighten out the path?
Well, that's what I think we're saying is, you know, see what you could do with the path, some minor adjustments to get a little more distance on the field.
I don't know if you guys can see the measurement tool or not,
Yes.
but we're struggling to get, you know, much past 220, 230.
Mm.
Now that I think about it, what's down the line at firefighters is what, 190?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not 250.
Yeah, none of it's gonna be 250.
Matt, could you turn on the gradients so that we could take a look at the hill?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it
So
certainly
there's
is a lot
10-foot
flatter.
contours.
Yeah, it's a lot flatter to the south.
No, I think that we're in some level of agreement that looking at the southernmost one, but rethinking the path to be able to get more space, and I think we have a good proposal.
Yep, we'll take a look at it and come back.
All right,
Okay.
any other discussion? All right, let's move on to item number 5, project update. Matt, only you can update us.
Yep, let me get to my notes here and make sure I cover everything that I want to talk about. So firefighters, the ADA and stormwater project that was mostly completed last year, that project's substantially complete. There's some pavement striping and electrical work that'll be completed as weather allows this spring. There's a goal of having that wrapped up before softball season. So in the next few weeks, we're hoping for less snow and more days like Saturday so that we can get to that point. The cross-country ski phase 2, as you're aware, we've hired an engineering firm, Wiser Engineering, to do a master stormwater plan, as well as design work for the trail system. We've had multiple meetings that have included CXC's architect for their building, CXC's trail designer, and the city's asphalt pump track design team with the International Mountain Biking Association. So there is progress moving forward there. They're on an aggressive schedule to continue to move forward on that project. The Market Street Playground, we met last week on site with GRG Playscapes. That's the company supplying that playground, as well as key members of our park staff. GRG is going to complete a site layout in early April. The city staff will prep the site. GRG intends to start construction in late April with anticipating about 4 to 5 weeks. So probably late May, early part of June, that playground should be complete and open. The Meadows Playground was ordered. It was scheduled to be installed in May. They've had some shipping delays, and are looking at late May, early June as a time frame right now for that playground to be installed. As everyone's aware, the Lakeview Tennis Court project is on hold, and we're hopeful to look to that in next year's budget process. The Lake Street boat launch and Lakeview East Park, we had master planning efforts for both of those planned for this year. I'm working to develop an RFP to identify a consultant for both projects that could be done together. The thought is that both areas are relatively close to each other, and having a combined public input process may bring more thoughts and better ideas to the table as we go through that process. There's some hope that it'd be saving and that we combine the public input sessions for both of those. So the plans to have the RFP finalized in March, complete consultant selection so that we can hopefully start that process in May and wrap that up in 2022 so that in time for budget planning for 2023.
All right.
That's a quick overview on some of the things I'm working on right now.
And what do you do in your spare time?
Chase my children around.
There you go. All right. Comments, questions?
One of them's driving now, so I guess she's chasing me around or something like that.
There you go. There you go. All right. Okay, no discussion. Craig, you're here, and I was just wondering if you had a reason you're here, or you just like coming to committee meetings?
I heard it's pretty exciting stuff, and no, I actually submitted an application to try to join the committee.
Oh,
And so
okay.
I just thought I would sit in on some of these meetings, I guess, just to get a flair and feel, see what you guys are up to.
Yeah, well, good. Well,
Appreciate
We'll
that,
see you
Craig. Thank
again.
you.
You bet.
that's
You're
right.
doing well.
All right. Well, that's the end of our agenda. So if there's no additional new items, or I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
All right. Thank you, David. Second.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. All right. Thank you all. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, and enjoy
Thank you.
the snow.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.